My name is Phoenicia Grant, and I am an advocate first, a counselor, former teacher. But I work in this work, I evaluate foreign transcripts. So today's presentation is 1 hour in length. The title of the presentation is Amplifying Advocacy and Graduation Rates by Evaluating Foreign Transcripts. So we will talk more about how evaluating foreign transcripts is directly related to increasing graduation rates for English learners. And also you will learn how to interpret international transcripts for high school students. So without further ado, let me go ahead and get started. I just want to let you know that this presentation will be recorded. And at the end, there is 30 minutes that has been allotted for if you have any questions, we can answer any questions live within that 30 minutes. But the presentation today is 1 hour in length. This is a contact slide, so it has all of my information. If you want to receive a copy of the recording, the PowerPoint, free resources, please complete the Contact Us section on the website, internationaltranscripts.com. In addition, everyone who completes a Google review will receive a free country profile snapshot, and 5 people will be selected to receive a $20 Amazon e-gift card. Those people will be selected based upon if their attendance in this particular webinar and also their Google review, right? So I'll be looking at those things to randomly select 5 people to receive the gift card, but everyone who completes a Google review will receive the free resource, which is the country profile snapshot for Afghanistan. So I just wanted to share that information. I have dropped the link in the chat. Let me just allow everyone to, usually I say ask your question, save your questions until the end so we can get through all of the information. I do apologize. So I'm unmuting everyone so that way when we get to the end of the presentation, those who still have questions, you can definitely ask those questions at the end so that way we can get through all the material. So let's go ahead and get started. Good morning. Okay, so a little bit about me. This is year 18 for me. I work at the district office in the 3rd largest school district in the state of Georgia, and I work in the EL Studies department. I am the only counselor in that department, and what I do is I evaluate all of the transcripts for elementary, middle, and high school. So I am K-12, but I work at the district and I evaluate all of the transcripts. I've trained counselors, teachers, ESOL and counseling directors, Title III coordinators. I've trained state departments, DOEs. I've trained regional educational agencies. I've trained school districts, and I've trained schools. So this training has been pushed out from the top to the bottom. I've presented at several conferences internationally at TESOL, Teachers of English Speakers of Other Languages, at the state level, Georgia TESOL. I was an invited presenter at NACAC, and also I work very closely with ASCA. So if anyone is going to the ASCA conference in Atlanta, I will be there. If you want to connect, please, please, please send me an email. And I love to meet up, and you can bring transcripts that you had questions about. Let's meet up, let's connect, because I will be there. I have really no excuse not to be there because I'm going to be in Atlanta. So I just wanted to put that out there. Last but not least, recently I collaborated with REL Northwest, which is the Regional Educational Laboratory. It's a nonprofit organization that utilizes applied research to help practitioners and policymakers improve equitable outcomes for English language learners in the Northwest. So this is Alaska, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, and Washington. So what they have done is they interviewed me, and they've also created guidance for evaluating foreign transcripts. I do have a question. You said something about going to the International Transcripts website for something, and I missed that part. Could you repeat it? Sure. Okay, so my website, and I'll just go back to it really quickly, is internationaltranscripts.com. There are free resources on that website, right? If you want a copy of the PowerPoint, the free resources, please complete the Contact Us section on that website. So it's actually a tab that says Contact Us. If you want a country profile snapshot, which is a free resource for Afghanistan, please leave a Google review. Everyone who leaves a Google review will receive that resource. And of course, I will randomly select 5 Google reviewers to receive the gift card. All right, you're so welcome. All right, so sorry about going back, but I just want to make sure everybody heard that. Okay, so a little bit about where I'm presenting to you today from. My district currently has a 90% minority enrollment, and half of our schools are Title I. We are the 3rd largest school system in Georgia, and we have a huge population of students that are served in Esau. It's about 16,000. We also have the largest refugee population in the southeastern part of the United States. So if you look at the top languages, which is in that black column, you'll see how diverse our school district is. We've been getting a lot of students from Afghanistan and Syria because of everything that's going on there. A lot of girls have been coming, enrolling in our district from Afghanistan. And a lot of the students have actually completed high school. So, just to kind of go ahead, if you have a student that has completed high school, that student in most states, and when I say most, I mean majority, the student is not eligible to enroll. So we'll talk more about that as the presentation goes on. As you can see, the 10th top language in our district is Bengali, and these are students coming from Bangladesh. And when I first started this work 11 years ago, I used to get anxiety when I saw India or Bangladesh, because I felt like I didn't understand the culture, and I felt like everything that I said was going to be challenged and it was going to be a haggle. So what I did is I started doing more research about Bangladesh, about India. And one thing that I learned during that process, and I'm always doing research, always watching documentaries, but one thing that stood out to me was in India, the highest rate for suicide is the day before the 10th grade exams are publicly shared. So when those results come out, more students would rather commit suicide than score low on those exams. So India is definitely a high stakes testing country. So it gave me a lot of perspective. And then as it relates to Bangladesh, there was a documentary I watched called It's a Girl, and it talked about how it felt to be born a girl in different countries. And one thing it talked about with Bangladesh is it talked about how having an ultrasound was illegal because some women were pressured to have abortions when they found out that they were having girls. So the country outlawed ultrasounds altogether. So you don't learn the sex of the baby until the baby is born. Another thing that I learned about Bangladesh was that prostitution is legal. And as early as age 13, girls would enter a brothel and start working as sex workers. So that was something that completely blew my mind. So I started to do some research in my district to see how many students we were registering from Bangladesh that were female. And what I noticed is 80% of the students registered were male and only 20% were female. So that it kind of gave me a better perspective of the culture. So I always say, the purpose of this slide is just to remember that there are 2 cultures. There's the culture that you see, the outer culture, that might be the race or the ethnicity, it might be the nationality, it might be something that's obvious to you. And then there's the inner culture. And you can have, this is a given, but you could have 2 people from the same country that have been raised completely different, the same as the United States. So I always lead with allow that student to narrate their own story and you learn from them. So I watch the documentaries to get a better general perspective, but I always get to know the student, get to know the family, to learn more about the culture. Because what you do learn when you connect with the students, as you already know, is you have more similarities than differences. Okay, so each year we evaluate about 2,200 transcripts in our district from countries all over the world. And what we've created is a transcript evaluation resource library. So we have about 32-inch binders of research. So what I would recommend, something that you should probably start doing if you're not doing already, is whenever you evaluate a transcript and you do research on that country, you want to put that in a binder or a resource. You can do a digital. Now we have a digital library, so we have gone through scanning all of these documents, and we have a digital resource, because when COVID happened, we thought we were going to be gone for a week. That turned into a year and a half. And when we came back in the office, it looked like a zombie apocalypse. Like everything said March, everything was dusty. Like we never knew. So moving forward after that experience, we don't know what else is coming, but we had never experienced anything like that. And most of us haven't experienced that either. But what we did is we started taking our hard copy materials and just scanning them and putting them online into a Google file. You can also ask your department if you can purchase cloud space if you don't have like Google Drive or OneDrive. Okay, so at today's presentation, we have different goals for different folks. And I always laugh when I say folks, so that is like my little Southern Belle alert. So what you get out of this training depends on who you are, right? Because who you are, where you work, and what role you serve in is going to determine, how this training works or this webinar works for you. So if you are a secondary professional, the things that you are looking for is you're looking at the international transcript to determine first, is the student eligible to enroll? Did the student graduate from high school? Yes or no? If they didn't, then you're looking at the next level, which is grade level placement. You want to know, okay, are they going to be placed by their age? Are they placed by the last grade they completed? Are they placed by how many credits are transferring over to a U.S. transcript? And then last but not least, you're looking at the transfer credit. So you're doing a course analysis to determine, okay, which courses are comparable to what is offered in the United States or in my school district. And ultimately, your goal as a secondary professional is high school graduation. Now, on the college side or post-secondary side, if you work in a college, university, technical school, adult ESL program, for the most part, post-secondary, we're really thinking about college, technical school, and university. Your main goal is college admission. So the first thing that you want to determine is, did the student complete high school? If no, the student is not eligible to enroll in your institution. So if the student completed high school, then, yes, the next thing you would look at is you're looking at that GPA calculation. So you're averaging all of those classes to see if they meet the GPA requirement. And then, of course, there are other requirements that they may have to make as well. But as it relates to the foreign transcript, if it's being evaluated in your institution and you're at the post-secondary level, those are the two main things that you're going to be looking for. Now, today's presentation will cover essential questions that have to be asked and answered in order to complete that evaluation. So the first question is, how does data, including real-world current events, influence transcript evaluation? What is that going to look like? One recent event that happened is we had the war in the Ukraine, between the Ukraine and Russia. The war in Ukraine, excuse me, not the Ukraine, the war in Ukraine and, with Russia. So we had a lot of Ukrainian students coming in. Now, one decision that was made that I quickly became aware of is their Ministry of Education decided that because the country is at war, all of those students that were in 12th grade, they were graduated before the school year ended. So we received a lot of students from the Ukraine that even though they came here because their country was in war, they came with a document indicating that they had completed high school. So at the K-12 level, which is where I work, because I'm a secondary professional, they were not eligible to enroll. So it was a matter of us redirecting them to the post-secondary level and telling them, hey, you need to go to the International Admissions Office and submit your documentation to see, what is it that you need to do to enroll at a post-secondary institution. That was one change that happened. So that's an example of how real world current events actually influence transcript evaluation. Now, had their country not been at war, if they had just transferred to us without completing that 12th grade year, then we would be able to enroll them. I think I have another question. Okay. Do you have a list of states that do not allow students to enroll if they graduated in their home country, or know where to look for this? I always thought it was at the discretion of the school district. This one is anonymous. If you could complete the contact us section, there is no list. When I train to my knowledge, there's not a list. There may be one that I'm not aware of. When I research the laws, the state regulations, and the state rules for a training, that's when I usually find that information. But no, that decision is based on the law. So the school district, and I'm kind of skipping ahead, but the school district creates like local policies, but the local policies are based on state regulations, state rules, and state law. So the school district isn't making that decision. That decision should mirror the state's law or the state's regulations. But if you tell me what state you're in, I'm more than happy to look that information up and give you some guidance. Okay, next question. How foreign educational systems compare and convert to the US system, right? So we need to be able to know if the student was in a middle school program or if they were in a high school program, because middle school in their country may be equivalent to high school in our country and vice versa. So we really need to know, like, what does that grade conversion look like? Also, we're going to talk about why standard operating procedures, policies, and laws should govern how foreign transcripts are evaluated, right? So a lot of people don't know that there are laws that govern enrollment for international transcripts, that there are exceptions to those laws. And sometimes it's just one of those things that you don't learn until you have an OCR, Office of Civil Rights complaint, or you may not learn until there's a class action. So what I try to advise school districts to do is to get ahead of the curve, train those key stakeholders, make sure they're familiar with the law, because we should always follow laws, policies, and procedures, not practice. Practice should mirror it, but practice is something that once you get the job, the person that's there trains you in the way that it's being done at that school or that it's being done in that district. But sometimes there's a breakdown between what's being done and what's your legal obligation. And a lot of times when I come in and I train school districts or I train state departments, I say, okay, this is what the law says. Now we can this is my interpretation. We can definitely contact legal to see what their interpretation is. But most of the time the law is written very vaguely because they're giving you that gray. So that the local school districts can make their decisions. But there are some things that they cannot make decisions on, because if it's law, the school district has to go with what the law is. And last but not least, how to apply the framework. So there is a framework that if you learn the framework, you can evaluate transcripts from any country because you start with the framework. And of course, we'll do a Q&A at the end, and I will tell you about some of the products and services that I offer. Okay, so enrollment and placement decisions. The first thing I like to say about this slide is you always follow the evaluation, all right? So this is the multilingual learner enrollment explained. And here are some of the concerns that I hear when I train school districts or when I consult with school districts. I hear, oh, well, what are we going to do with the older MLs? They're going to age out before they graduate from high school. They're going to um, hurt our graduation cohort, things of that nature. Now, I don't know if there are any principals in this training, but you follow the evaluation. Usually, the principal at a secondary institution or high school, their evaluation is tied to, in our state, it's called the CCRPI, the College and Career Readiness Performance Index. So in that particular part of their evaluation, they're looking at students graduating in a 4-year cohort. A lot of students, not all, okay, you can't apply all to anybody, but a lot of students that are older MLs, they may also be students with limited or interrupted formal education, SLIFE students. That means they may have gaps in their education. They may have started 9th grade and then been out of school for 2 years. So when they enroll in your state, their 9th grade entry date starts when they started high school, not when they arrive in your state. So they may be off track for graduation. Now, because of that, sometimes the practice is to exclude these students from enrollment in a general educational program or comprehensive program. That is against the law. I always tell people, listen, I understand your evaluation may be hurt, but the first thing that everyone has to do is follow the law. There are laws that govern students' rights to enroll, and there are also laws that govern who must be enrolled. So first we look at those two things. And then if the student doesn't meet those two laws, then the student isn't eligible or doesn't have the right to be enrolled in a general educational program. But we should not be directing students just because a student is 18. We should not be like automatically directing them to the GED program or adult ESL program unless for your state there's an 18-year-old cutoff, right, in your law. But I see a lot of it because, it's not the children that are the problem. If I'm gonna be real, it's the adults. We all came into education to help the children, but some kind of way, I don't know if it's 5 years in, 2 years in, 15 years in, 20 years in, sometimes it becomes about us and not about the kids. We start thinking about our evaluation. We start thinking about our livelihood instead of thinking about creating access and opportunities for all students. Now, it's true. If you have a student that's older, they may age out. So I call it creative advisement. We have to have a game plan for these students to prepare them to be lifelong learners. So it's not all about graduating in 4 years. That is the goal for everyone. We want that goal. But if our students fall short, we still need to have a plan for them. As it relates to English language proficiency, I have some registrars and administrators calling me all the time saying, this student doesn't know English. Why are they here? They have the right to be there, right? So our students are tasked with learning English while taking graduation requirements. And I'm strictly talking about high school students here. We're required by law, if they qualify for English language support, to provide that support. But we're also required to expose them to the rigor that they will need to be lifelong learners. What good is a high school diploma if you cannot communicate in English well enough to get a high-performing job? And if anyone knows about Chat GPT, it's like the Google killer. It's artificial intelligence. And some of the students, right, if you don't know about it, you definitely want to Google it. Chat GPT. Some of the students are using this artificial intelligence to write their papers. They're using it to do presentations. It's basically like having an encyclopedia that writes like a human being in your pocket at your fingertips. So we're seeing a lot of students that are using this, right? Even we are seeing some MLs using it. So we're telling them, listen, I had to go to college, graduate school, undergraduate, to learn how to write like this AI, but you will need to fall back on your own skill set. So like I said, and that goes for everybody. Everybody is trying to use it. That's the new hot topic You'll see webinars popping up everywhere. But if you don't know about it, definitely look into it, because I can tell you it's a game changer. There's some tasks that you can tell it to do and it does. But going back to the presentation, if you don't know about it, then you can't catch the kids when they're using it, right? Because you could have a low performing student and then you get this paper and you're like, hold on, how did you? Maybe they use the AI. All right. A little bit off track, but I just wanted to share that because literally it's good information. Now, last but not least, graduation requirements. When students receive credit for their international transcripts, we try to give them their graduation required courses as much as you can. Now, you can't turn water into wine. Like, you can't force a course to be something else. But as much as you can, if there's a little bit of gray, we want to err on the side of awarding graduation credit, because that's going to help the student. Every credit that they earn from their foreign transcripts is one more credit that they won't have to take with us in our school district. So we definitely want to help with that. Also, as it relates to this, I want to say that in most states, MLs, multilingual learners, or ELs, English learners, are enrolled using the same laws as US-born students, but there are a few laws that can also assist with the enrollment of your MLs. The McKinney-Vento Act. It's a law that protects homeless students, individuals who lack a fixed, regular, or adequate nighttime residence. And many MLs are met under this requirement. Now, older students. In our district, we place students based on credits. We don't care about the age. So, to be frank, we don't care about the age. The student could be 20 years old and go into the 9th grade. If they 0 credits equals 9th grade. So if they register in our district without a transcript, we place them in the 9th grade. Now, I've trained districts in other states and they say, I can't believe you placed that student in the 9th grade. Well, we have a promotion and retention local policy. I'm not above the policy. I have to adhere to the policy. But there are other states and school districts that place a student solely on age. So if the student is age appropriate for 12th grade, they're going to put the student in a 12th grade homeroom, but the student will remain in the 12th grade possibly for 4 years until they meet all of their graduation requirements, meaning they take all of the courses that they need. Another thing, older students, as I said before, they may be encouraged not to enroll and to pursue their GED. So the first thing that you need to know is, does a student have the right to enroll in a general educational program, your traditional high school or comprehensive high school? Or are they required to be enrolled, right? Regardless of their age. So if the answer to those 2 questions are yes, that student must be enrolled, because whoever is making the decision not to enroll the student is the person that is denying their right or violating the law. And we all know what happens when you don't follow the law. So I always tell the parents, you're nice, I love you, but orange is not the new black, and I don't like flip-flops. So I always make that joke with the parents, when all else fails, I try to fall on being funny, because what can you do? All right, now, as it relates to identifying international high school graduates, if you're on the post-secondary side, you want to know when students graduate, because that's going to let you know if the student can be that's part of the admission process, right? So that's like the first thing that you're looking at. But on the secondary side, that means that the student is not eligible to enroll in most states. To my knowledge, I believe Texas is one of the states that I trained that will enroll a student that's a high school graduate, an international high school graduate. But all the other states, New York, California, Florida, Georgia, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, North Dakota, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Jersey. I'm just trying to think of like the states that I've trained off the Tennessee, Louisiana, Michigan, Illinois. I mean, like pretty much everybody that I've trained, Nevada, New Mexico, high school graduates are not eligible. But the purpose of this slide is just to tell you when their school year ends. Now, we have a lot of students that come from the Caribbean, specifically Jamaica. And in Jamaica, they're under the United Kingdom system, which ends at 11th grade, right? Now, they do have 2 additional years, but that is optional. And it transfers over in most states as college level courses. So we do hear a lot, parents will tell us, well, the student completed high school, but we want them to get in-state residency. So we just want them to be enrolled in 12th grade for a year so that they can get in-state tuition. And we tell them, we're sorry, we can't do that. Sometimes we'll get information from immigration saying the student has to be enrolled, and we tell them, if you give their diploma to the immigration agency, that should be enough. And if they still need to be enrolled, they can enroll in a GED program or they can enroll in an adult ESL program, but they are not able to enroll in our school district. There was a lawsuit that I researched recently that happened in Venezuela where a student was denied enrollment. And they said that the student, basically the school district stated that the student graduated and therefore, according to the law, was not eligible to enroll. The family filed an OCR, Office of Civil Rights complaint, and also sued the school district, citing that the school district discriminated against them based upon national origin. So they were saying because they came from Venezuela and they graduated, that was the reason that the enrollment was denied. But in that particular lawsuit, the school district ended up, being was not guilty, was not at fault for that, because what the judge said was that they treated that student the same way that they would have treated any other student that had completed high school or graduated. So for example, if a student earns a GED, which is the equivalent of a high school diploma, you would not enroll that student in a high school. I have a few questions in the chat, and I know I said the question will wait until the end, but let me see if it's anything. Okay, anything burning. Okay. Okay, someone said, hey, Jennifer, you may get this question later, so feel free to wait to answer it. Okay, I'll wait. Okay, what if they do not? Okay, so someone said, what if they do not disclose? What if they do not disclose they graduated in an international school till they are registered in the confidential space of a counselor? Great question, happens all the time. So just to reiterate, the student, the family knows that their child has graduated, but they don't tell you that because they want the student to be enrolled, right? The family has all kinds of motives. So this is what we do. If the family says that the student completed 11th grade, for example, and they're coming from Jamaica, but they don't have any records. Now we have to have evidence to deny enrollment. But just them giving us that information, we will tell them that, we're going to place a student in 9th grade, and the student will remain in 9th grade, and they'll be with us for 4 years because you don't have any transcripts, so we don't have any evidence to verify that you graduated. And usually within 2 months, they will give the transcripts because they're thinking that if they just show us that the student completed high school, that we'll place them in 12th grade. As soon as we get the evidence, we withdraw the student immediately and we graduate that student's state ID number. It's very important to put that into your process. You want to graduate the state ID number because if you don't graduate it, the student goes 30 minutes to another district and they enroll, and they do the same thing. If their graduation state number, if their state ID number is not graduated. And what that means is each student has a number that's assigned to them, and that's how the state tracks if students go from, district to district. But once your state ID number is graduated, you can't enroll anywhere in that state. I wish we had a national database or national number that every student could get so that we could track the students as they move out of state to make sure that they don't try to, go to another state and enroll. But Jennifer, to your point, if they just verbally tell you and you don't have any evidence, they're just going to remain in whatever grade level according to your school district and earn credit with you. But as soon as they provide documentation as evidence that the student graduated, they're no longer eligible to remain enrolled, and they should be withdrawn immediately based upon the law. Going back to the student in Venezuela really quickly, as I said before, the school district in New Jersey denied enrollment because a student graduated. The parents tried to sue the school district, citing discrimination for national origin, but the school district was supreme in that particular lawsuit because they said the school district was operating as they would for anyone. So they didn't do anything different for this student. Any student that graduated from high school was not eligible to re-enroll. So just knowing that. That is very important. So that is why, like I said, just familiarizing yourself with how to determine if a student graduated is very important if you're on the secondary level. And of course, the post-secondary as well, because you need that for admissions. You don't want to get a partial transcript and make that decision. Okay, what you see here is a link to a book that gives you the name of all of what the diploma is called in each country, their high school diploma. That's a free resource. You can email them and they will send you 3 books. They'll send you one book that tells you like, it'll say like secondary completion document. So it has some like examples of diplomas from other countries. And it also has what the diploma is called. So what you need to be looking for on the foreign transcript. They also have a document of like keywords or terms that are translated in several languages. Very helpful. And then they also have a document that talks about the different school years and conversions, right? So for example, if you get a student from Ethiopia, their school year is 8 years behind us, right? So if the year is 2020 in the United States, in Ethiopia, the year is 2012. Because their year, their calendar year is different than us. And for example, if you get a student from Nepal, their school year is like 64 years before us. So it's not uncommon to see a school year or a year that says 2064. And you're like, hold on, what? We're not in 2064. This is 2023, but they're 64 years. Their year is like 64 years ahead of us. But this is a great free resource. So please, please, please complete that contact us section so you can get that resource. And all you have to do is just email them and they'll send you the books for free. Okay, what you see, let me just check really quickly. All right, we're doing good on our time. Okay, is it possible to share the IF link in the chat or email? So helpful. Okay, yes, let me look and see if I can, copy and paste. Hold on one moment so you can do that now. Oh, let me see. I will have to share it. I can share it later once I pause the screen, but it's not going to let me share it right now. Okay. So this chart is the grade level equivalency chart. So this is basically just showing you what an educational system is, right? Because you have to be able to determine when you're looking at a foreign transcript, hey, what grade level is this? So the term education system or educational system generally refers to public schooling, not private, and more commonly it's kindergarten through high school programs. But outside of the United States, a school district are typically the smallest recognized forms of educational systems, right? So in the United States, you have the United States Department of Ed, and then each state has their state department. Like for example, in Georgia, so it's the USED, it's the Georgia Department of Ed, and then it's like each local educational agency. There are other states that have the USED, the state, then they have regional educational agencies, and then they have local educational agencies. So it all depends on how your state is organized. But outside of the US, the school may be operating as the Ministry of Education. Completely different, completely different, completely different. The main thing with grade placement is you want to identify the last grade completed, and you don't want to award transfer credit for an elementary transcript. Let me say that again. You don't want to award high school credit for an elementary transcript. Now, the reason that I'm saying that is some of the countries in Central America, they use the same words to identify grade levels. You have to look for the words that says primaria, primary, versus the ones that say like the basic cycle or common cycle or secondary. You always want to look at that. The transcripts look identical. It's just that one word that is different. Let me look in the, see if we have anything else. Okay, someone found it. Thank you, Madeline. I appreciate you. All right, Madeline found the link. So it's in the link. It's in the Q&A. So look in the Q&A to get it. Thank you so much, Madeline, for helping out. All right, so transcript evaluation, laws, policies, and procedures. So I always say got legal fees because everybody knows that I am a red and I am a yellow. Yellow because I'm always thinking about caution, and red because I like things done a certain way. I like clear and concise. I like everything to be, I am very much black and white. Put it in writing. Don't tell me anything. Put it in writing. And I always go off of laws, board rules, state rules, policies, and procedures. So these are some of the things that you want to do. So I always joke and say, why do school districts wait until they get sued to create standard operating procedures for transcript evaluation? You need procedures. If you've ever gone through an OCR audit, everything, when OCR comes to audit, they've already, complaints have already been filed and they're looking for trouble. And you know what they say, when you look for trouble, you find trouble. So I can tell you today that this process, the foreign transcript evaluation process, it has been audited by the USED. It's been audited by the Title III. It's been audited by the State Department. It's been audited by the Board of Regents. It's been audited by OCR, and it always passes with flying colors because the practice, we don't operate off practice. We have a SOP, we have procedures. The procedures are connected to the local board policies, and the local board policies are connected to the state law. But sometimes, like I said, there's a breakdown. The policy is like a governing document, but it doesn't have the specifics, and that's why you need those SOPs. Now, the SOP is not a go-to guide. I mean, it's not a how-to guide. It's not going to tell you how to, but it gives you strict guidelines that should be followed when you're evaluating transcripts. So here are some of the procedures that we've adopted. The first thing is you always want to operate within the parameters of the federal and state law and local policy when you're creating the procedure. So you just use that as your focus. Some of the federal and state laws that impact this work, the eligibility for enrollment law, you want to know who has the right to be enrolled in a general educational program. You always want to look at the compulsory age law. You want to know who must be, right? So you're going from a requirement to the next level is who has the right, but both of them are laws. And there are also exceptions. Next, you want to look at the seat time requirement. Seat time requirement is usually covered in two different laws. Either one, each state has to create a calendar. They have to have X number of hours that instruction is offered. Or two, they have a definition for a Carnegie unit or credit. And usually that definition includes an instructional time requirement. So those are things that we look at when we try to convert over and give a fair and sustainable transcript evaluation procedure. We want to look at those laws. Now, in addition to that, guidelines that we follow. Translation should be verbatim without interpretation or evaluation, right? So You have to know if your school district has Title III funds that can be used to translate documents, has Title III funds to outsource transcript evaluations. If the parent or guardian is responsible for providing an English translation because it's a document that was issued by another agency. So those are some of the things that you want to know in that category when you create your procedure. You want to know what is the maximum number of credits that you're going to award, right? Because you're going to have students from Afghanistan with 16 classes on a transcript, and you want to know if they get credit for all of those. Also, you want to determine what grades are you going to award. Are these students going to receive alpha grades? Are they going to receive a numeric grade? So those are other things. And of course, you want to interview the student, use available resources, and compare state course description guides, whatever it's called in your state, to determine what courses should be awarded. All right, more dues. These are the things that I love, and I really got to cut back on the truffle. But these are the things that I love. So when I'm doing this work, I always say, don't risk these things. That's my daughter. I need to pay childcare. That's my certification. It's not my certification, but it's just the idea of certification. I absolutely love this particular show that's on Disney Plus. So I don't want to jeopardize my livelihood. So I need to make sure that I take my feelings out of it and I operate based on the law, state policy, local policy, and the procedure. Okay. So as much as I want to help my students, I don't want to create an unfair advantage, right? So the main thing that you have to do is you have to be fair and consistent. You shouldn't have a student enrolling in school A and they receive 8 credits, and then you have another student enrolling in school B and they only get 5 credits, and they have a transcript from the same country in the same grade level. That is an unfair advantage. Students talk, parents talk, communities talk. And when you have those type of discrepancies, that's where the liability comes in, because one student is given an unfair advantage. So I cannot reiterate, if it's done at the district level, you need to pull in all your stakeholders so that you have other people who are accountable for appeals and, just a second person to review if someone does have a question. If you're doing it at the school level, you want to make sure that everybody's doing it the same way. All right, other things that you want to do. You want to know if the school that the student attended outside the US was on an annual, biannual, or quarterly or trimester system. That's very important because you don't want to award full credit for a partial transcript. You want to determine how is the science credit going to be awarded, right? Are you going to give half credits? Are you going to give full credits? Because most students outside of the US, science is done, they take an integrated approach. So they take their science courses much differently than we take in the US. You want to determine what is the criteria for awarding English literature credit. Is it the instructional language in the country? Is it if they went to a school that was accredited by Cognia? Like, what is your criteria for awarding the English credit? Now, those are the dues. Now, we're going to get into, I'll talk briefly about the don'ts, things that you don't want to do before we talk about this, and I'll just go back to the dues. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to award credit for, well, what I would recommend, don't award credit for American government, American civics, American history, health. Economics and health is a local decision, but don't award credit for anything that says American unless the student was enrolled in a school that was accredited by Cognia or one of the accreditation agencies that's accepted by the United States Department of Education. Don't award credit if the student, spent less than 2 hours per week in a course, right? So if the student only spent 1 hour a week, you're not going to award credit because they're not going to meet the instructional time requirements. Also, the most important thing, most, when I talk about don'ts, is don't risk your certification or your freedom giving students an unfair advantage. And I know this seems like a no-brainer, right? But I once knew a counselor who was pressured by the basketball coach to revise an evaluation that we completed. Now, we completed the evaluation, the student was awarded 7 credits, but this counselor was pressured. So she revised the evaluation and awarded 11 credits, 3 additional credits. Now, because the student received so many credits for one school year, it triggered a red flag with our MIS department, which is a department that, processes transcripts and all of that. And they came back to me and said, why did you award 11 credits? And I said, we didn't. And then I gave them the evaluation that I completed. And then they went and said, who put this in? So they went back to the person who revised it. And that person didn't lose her job, but she ended up getting demoted. And I just said, you know what? It wasn't worth it because the person who was pressuring her didn't get demoted. The person who made the decision got demoted. And that's not uncommon, especially when you're dealing with athletes because of NCAA eligibility. If you just Google it, you're going to find so many cases of coaches that are changing transcripts, using duplicate transcripts. And I'm not saying every coach does this, right? Because anybody can make a bad decision, but I always say, don't risk it. All right, enough about that. Now, I'm going to give you one tool for your toolbox. And this is foreign grade conversion. So this is an example of what procedure looks like for determining an equivalent grading scale or foreign grade conversion, right? So this is an example of a procedure. So we look at the foreign grade, we have an equivalent. So the first thing we do is we look at that numerical grade and we put it on an A through F scale. And then we award a midpoint grade. So if the student earned an A in their country, we give them a 95. So this is just an example of that. We put some of the rationale to why we award this, but here's the example. So you have a student from India. They utilize the entire 100-point scale. So 60 to 100 is an A on a 100-point scale. But in Indonesia, 95 to 100 is an A. But both of those students received an A in their country. So their US grade equivalent is an A, and therefore they would receive a 95 because in our state, we can only award midpoint grades. Let me show you that again. So the first thing you do is, let's say the student earned a 60 in algebra. So you look at the grading scale for India and it says 60 to 100. So this is where we are here. It's equivalent to an A. So we award a 95. So you have to do this conversion. Now, if we just took this 60 and put it on a US scale, that would be an F. So what you have to do is find the international numerical grading scale and then convert that over to an alpha scale for the US, and then convert it over to a numerical. So it's a 3-step process. I've seen counselors and teachers and other people who are doing this work, and they see the student that comes from India with the 60, and they give the student an F because they're looking at the US scale. But what we should be doing is converting it over. So you look at that 60, you look at what it would have been in their country. Like I said, in India, 60 to 100 is an A. And then you look at what is the US grade equivalent, which is an A, and then you can bring it over. Some districts may stop right there at the alpha grade and leave it as an A. In my state, we don't do letter grades. We have to have numerical grades. So that A would be transferred in as a 95. If you're coming from another state and you're using alpha grades, once you get to Georgia, for example, we're going to change that A to a 95 midpoint grade. All right. And this is just an idea of what not to do. Some people are familiar with the educators that went to prison for changing test scores. So I always use this as an example of these are educated professionals who, for whatever reason, chose to alter a student's record. All right. They altered a grade, a test score. But changing grades is no different. Right. So I'm not willing to have a mugshot to help a student. So I always put that in there as like a little scare tactic. But of course, no one here is going to do that. All right. So we have about 5 minutes left. So we'll quickly go through the essential questions scavenger hunt. So this is an example from Mexico. This is a resource, comes out of Broward County and Palm Beach County, which I've trained those districts. And they have a great resource. So it comes out of there. So when you're looking at the foreign transcripts, and we have about 5 minutes. So when you're looking at the foreign transcript, the things that you want to be able to pull out of the transcript, you have to find, there are several things you have to find. The first thing you have to find is the grade level. So here's the grade level here. It says Tercer Grado. You also, and you see here where it says secondary education. So this is letting me know that this is the 3rd year of secondary education, which in Mexico, this is equivalent to middle school. I mean, it's their secondary education is 7 through 9, but that 3rd year is equivalent to our 1st year in high school. So you need the grade level. You need the school year. This is 11-12 school year. You need to know what country it is. So if you look here, very small, it says Mexicanos. So that lets you know it's Mexico. You need the final grade. Where is that? So what that means is if you see these columns blank, it's not a complete school year. So you need the final grade. Then you need to know, hey, can these courses be converted over? If the student has Spanish 3, can I award that course in my state? Now, of course, if you're at the post-secondary level, you want the final average. So you would just add all these up. I mean, this is 9th grade. So you would have to do 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. You would need all of the years that the student was enrolled. And you would add up all the grades to get the GPA. Now, you may use an app called Scalero Pro. I'll put that in the chat really quickly. This is they have a good, let me see, Scalero Pro. You can get like free, I think 10 GPA calculations. I don't know if anybody uses that, but they will do a GPA calculation. If you're post-secondary, if you are secondary, you're just transferring those courses in, and most likely you already have an information system that will calculate the GPA. You don't have to do that manually. And they may also have it at the state level as well. So going back really briefly, you need to know the school year, the grade level, the final grade, if the courses can be converted over, the country, and of course you have to have a grading scale. So those are some of the things that you're going to look at. Now, next question. How can evaluating foreign transcripts lead to higher graduation rates? This is like the main reason that we are here to answer this question. And simply put, when students receive credit for courses that they took outside the US, when they receive graduation requirements, those are courses that they don't have to take with us. So as much as possible, you want to give them those courses. It's just like if you have a US transfer. You're looking at what they took in their state, and then you're looking at what is required in your state to graduate, and you want to match those courses up as much as possible, because the more classes they have to take with you, the longer it's going to take for them to graduate. So we definitely do creative advisement. We look to see which courses match up to our graduation rates. And then, which courses match up to our graduation requirements, and we try to award those courses, because that means they're going to be with you less time, which is going to help your graduation rate. Okay, so You might be wondering, which one would you prefer? So I always ask this question: would you prefer to have more time or more money? So I would say you would prefer probably to have both. So in a school district, for example, that outsourced their transcript evaluation process for last year, they had 120 transcripts and they sent them out. We evaluated them. Now, the average time that it takes to evaluate a transcript is about 2 hours. So if you multiply the 2 hours by the 120, that district saved 240 hours. And if you work 12 months a year, that's equivalent to saving staff 1 hour per workday by outsourcing. So that's one way that you can save time. Now, saving money. This same school district, what I showed them is I said, okay, by outsourcing those 120 transcripts, if those students had to pay for those credits independently, right? Because we awarded a total of 840 credits from those 120 evaluations. So in the state of Florida, the average cost for one credit is about $500. So this is if you have students that if they had to take it somewhere else, that's about how much they would pay. Or if they had to take a course online to try to catch up and those courses weren't offered in the district, it would be about $500. Now, if you take the total amount of credits multiplied by the total amount for one credit, or the average cost per credit, you will get 420,000. Now, minus the cost of the 120 evaluations, the school district saved 402,000. Not just the school district, families saved, because we're thinking about all of the students that received an evaluation. So by having those transcripts evaluated, having that credit awarded, that was less credit that they would have to finance on their own if they needed additional credits. Because as we know, if you have students that are transferring in with no transcripts, it may be hard for them to get all of the credits they need within that 8-period day or that 7-period day. Okay, and if districts have Title III funding and we wanted to outsource this, could we use the funding through Title? Yes, that is correct. I have some information about this state of Texas that has it specifically. But yes, Title III funds are used to outsource transcript evaluations. It's not supplanting. Okay, let me go to the next slide. All right, so we also provide training. This month I'm very busy. I just trained a school district in Virginia. I'm going to be training a school district in Delaware. I'm going to be training the State Department of South Carolina. So I am all over doing training. Now, during COVID, online was the most popular model, but now since, well, I want to say COVID is over, but more people are requesting the online training. So, we do offer training. And like I said, the main benefit of training is all of the laws are researched for your state, the board policies, the state regs, the state rules, and an SOP is created specifically for your school district. But during the training, everyone that's there, all of the stakeholders, they have the opportunity to co-create the SOP, right? So how many times have you gone to a training where you're just given a directive? This is their opportunity to co-create it. You're not just being handed something to do. You are thinking about, how is this going to look for your students? What's best for your students? So we make changes to the SOP, and at the end of the training, you leave with a finalized document that can be implemented immediately. Okay, some of the resources, some districts are always saying, oh, we need more resources, we need more resources. So we created the foreign transcript evaluation manuals. There are 3 volumes. Each manual is about 200 pages, and it has evaluated transcripts and research from 20 countries. So each manual, like I said, you have 20 countries, and it gives you all of the research you need to evaluate that transcript. That is from beginner level to expert level. We also have the country profile snapshot, and I just want to remind you, if you complete a Google review, you have the opportunity to get a free country profile snapshot for Afghanistan. Now, this is going to be a 2 to 3 page document. It has grading scales, hours, educational systems, central questions, instructional language, evidence of graduation. It has all the information you need to complete that evaluation. What it doesn't have is a sample of an evaluated transcript from that country and additional research about that country. And I recommend if you're at the intermediate or expert level, that would be a good resource. And then, of course, if you are like learn on your own and you just want the training materials, then we also have the toolkit. Okay, almost done. Evaluation. So there are two types of evaluations. For elementary and middle, there is something called a grade verification. And if you have a transcript there and you need to know what's the last grade completed, if the student was promoted, what's their GPA, that can be provided. If you have a student where you believe that that student has graduated and you want another person to look at it to give you a document to say that you've received the equivalent of a high school diploma, we also provide that. We have some districts that's the only service that they want. They just want to know, did the student graduate, so that they can give that to the parent, and then they know that they're denying enrollment and they have a reason to deny enrollment. Okay, the other type of evaluation, which is very, very common, especially if you're at the secondary level, is a transcript evaluation. This is where you award transfer credit. So if you look on the left-hand side, you see this transcript from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And then on the right, this is what your school district receives. You receive the courses that, you know, the foreign courses are equivalent to. So we're going to look at your state course guide and your local board course guide to see what courses do you offer in your school district and what are the comparable courses. So you receive the specific courses. Now, if you go to a traditional credentialing agency, if the student took mathematics, they're just going to award mathematics. And then the local counselors or local registrars will still have to make the decision as to what math course this is. We take the guesswork out. We also give you the alpha grade and the numeric grade, and we give you the course code. So it's like a no-brainer. Once you get that evaluation, all you have to do, you can give it to the data clerk, the counselor can do it, whoever can do it. All they have to do is it's like transferring, it's a similar process to a out-of-state student. So we also have that as well. All right, again, this is my contact information. If you want the free resource for Afghanistan, please complete a Google review. 5 people will be selected to get the Amazon gift card. They also have to do a Google review. If you want the PowerPoint and the resources, there are additional free resources that are available. Please complete the contact us section on the website. So now the time is 11:37. I'm so sorry that I went over 7 minutes. I'm very passionate about my work. But let's open it up for, and I'll leave this on, let's open it up for a Q&A. You can either let me first answer the questions that are in the Q&A that I didn't get to. There was just one, and it says, you may get to this question later, so feel free to wait to answer. I attended your virtual training in Kent ISD. I remember you in November. Okay, so in Kent ISD, that was a training for a regional educational agency. So we trained multiple districts in the state of Michigan. Most of our students do not come from English taught schools, and we're having trouble determining when to count their English as English credit versus foreign credit. We do not want it to we do not want it to negatively impact their graduation, but we also want to only issue English credit if it seems legitimate. Thanks. Okay, so Jen, what I would say is that is a local decision based on local policy or your local procedure. If your district wants to award English credit for the English courses taken on a foreign transcript, and what I mean by English credit, they have the right to award English literature credit if that's what they choose to do. According to NCAA guidance, NCAA only awards English credit for students that have an instructional language as English, right? So when I train school districts, I usually tell them if the instructional language was English, award that English literature credit. But there are some districts that say that's not going to work for us. The student only has 4 years to graduate. So we have decided that we're going to award English literature credit for any course that says English on their transcript. That's not in sync with NCAA guidelines, but NCAA doesn't govern how credit is awarded or transferred into a school district. It's just an outside agency that some school districts refer to. So I would say, Jennifer, go back to your team and talk about the pros and cons of awarding this credit. Make sure that everybody in the district is doing, creating a fair process, and that if you award it for one student from Mexico, you're going to award it for every student from Mexico. So once you make the decision, you just have to make the decision and then be consistent with that decision. Okay, does anyone else have a question? You can either